All right, everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the NBA slate for today, which is a nice compact slate. And I'm going to be, again, doing it on my own, so I'm going to be doing it using my process, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. Because, as you know, the players could change throughout the course of the day. People can get ruled out and things like that. So I do think it is important to, pay attention to process and not exactly who I come up with. Because that is all going to change. And I am going to be going live before lock a little bit later on. So the first thing that I do, and again, this is my runs as of now for DraftKings, is first thing I will do is I'll sort everybody by my values, which is my Haber or Sheets value or whatever it is, and to see if there's any huge priority for who you need to get in. And the thing is that the way that this value metric is really just does give the edge to the people with high raw points, which is probably worth mentioning. It's probably the right thing to do. So the first thing you'll notice is that Westbrook is just a clear standout. So he's going to be someone who you're going to want to get in. And to put it in perspective, I don't usually see value rankings over 225. 240 is kind of in its own world, so you're going to want to get him in. Then what you'll notice is that there's kind of like, kind of a bunching of these three guys here underneath. And that would be Curry, Giannis, and Lillard. So the question is usually going to be is whether you want to play Westbrook with a second stud, with two other studs, or maybe with no studs if you get these middle range guys that correlate well, something like that. Like, for example, if you wanted to play Westbrook and not and say Lillard, it would be nice if you wanted to play Lillard alongside of maybe Christian Wood, right? With the idea being that, the way that Lillard, if at all, is going to get his four quarters is going to be if somebody like Christian Wood or, for example, Olenek does well. And as a matter of fact, I think that's probably wise. I think that the only way Lillard gets there is that if he does go four quarters, and I feel as though the only way he does go four quarters is if one of those guys does well. So I'm going to go ahead and say that you're only going to want to play Lillard alongside with Wood or Olenek. And likewise, if you want, you can look at the correlation aspect of Curry. So Curry is going against Utah. So you'll notice that Ingles is ranked pretty high over here. So what you're probably going to want to do, if you can, is play Curry with, say, Ingles. Now, it's not as important, though, right? Because that spread rates to be a little closer. So Curry can get there without the Utah guys smashing also. And that's a really big difference. So I think it's good. You get like good overtime vig, right? If you play the two of them together, but it's not 100% necessary, right, to play Curry alongside of some of the Utah guys. With respect to Westbrook, you could certainly play him with Trae Young, right? The Atlanta's a 7.5-point favorite, and you certainly do have some overtime vig. If you get overtime with Lillard and not Lillard, with Trae and Westbrook, you're in freaking business. The thing is that 7.5-point spread, that means more than anything that Westbrook's going to be having to just put in his best like the whole game. They're not going to take him out when it's a 12-point game with 4 minutes to go. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna be the man. So that's my first look is on these spend ups. You could play Westbrook with Trae, and that would certainly make a lot of sense. You could play Curry with Ingles or Bojan. That certainly makes a lot of sense. And if you want to play Giannis, you could play him alongside of DeRozan, as correlation over there, and that certainly makes a lot of sense. And what's good about the DeRozan play is that he rates to be under 10% owned. The Christian Wood might rate to be under 10% owned. It might not be. We have to see how ownership kind of plays out throughout the course of the day. And what's interesting also is that Trae rates to be lower owned. So it's I think that's probably kind of a smart idea. That instead of playing, say, Westbrook and Curry, they play Westbrook with Trae. Or instead of playing Westbrook and Curry, play Curry with DeRozan? Yeah, with DeRozan. No, Curry with the Utah guys, right? That certainly makes sense. So what I would do is I would play Westbrook, and if you can, right, play one of those other studs with a correlative third piece. That would be my spend up situation. Next thing I want to look at is the values. So when I look at raw values, according to the way I look at it, unless they're over 6x, it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, you could make arguments that these are good plays, but it's not like you must jam them in. But I mean, if you want to play like two studs, I mean, these guys become very, very important, right? To play Ish, Bertans, Kelden Johnson, and/or Lonnie Walker, or even Dean Wade, it becomes really important because, like, I'll show you. Like, let's just say you wanted to play Westbrook and let's say you wanted to play just Westbrook and Giannis. Okay, you're already at 4,700 a man, right? And God forbid you wanted to play him alongside of Trae Young, then now you're at 3,780. But you could do it. You could make cases for all those guys. And the good thing is that the San Antonio guys, that identified, they at least, they're not going to get there alongside of DeRozan and what's his name, DeJounte Murray anyway. So they might be kind of decent plays to play in builds without those guys. And Dean Wade, as ugly as it is, I mean, if you want to make these types of builds work, these are the guys you're going to need to play. And I think Ish is fine. I mean, he's not going to. Problem is he takes the guard position, which is a little annoying. So you could make this work, right? You could play two studs with some correlation, right? So Westbrook, Trae, with and a second stud, or you could play, for example, Westbrook, Giannis with what's his name, with DeRozan, who fortunately takes up a small forward position. That actually is a little cheaper, right? It's a little cheaper and it takes up a small forward position. So this actually might make a lot of sense. Or if you didn't want to do any of that, right, you could then go play Curry with Ingles. Like, for example, he might take up, if I'm lucky, a small forward position. Yep. Let's put him in the guard position just to kind of see what it looks like. And then you're at 4,400 a man. Now it's no great shakes, but you could certainly make this work. And this would be your spend up. This would be a way to spend up. You spend up on two guys, you get some correlation, and then you fill it in with these 4,800 values. And I think that makes a lot of sense today. Because all the other like big correlation plays are all going to be in that mid-range. All involve the stud. It's not going to involve like mid-range with mid-range. So, that's where I'd be at least. So if with that being the case, let's take another look at these values. So it's Ish, Bertans. Again, Ish is going to be the premier play, right? I mean, he's the one that's over 6x. Bertans, he's going to be close. Kelden Johnson, 4,400. Lonnie Walker, 4,200. Yang would make a little bit of sense. But again, I would probably only play Yang in lineups where I'm not correlating the Utah game, right? Because I feel as though for Yang to get there, you need those other guys to not as many shots, right? So I would probably play Yang as a one-off in lineups that did not have those other Utah guys, which by transposition means that I would play Yang in lineups without Curry. Right? Makes sense. So if I were going to play, again, like Yang, I'd play him in lineups without Curry. Which means that maybe I wouldn't play Ingles there. So here we could play something like, if you played Westbrook with Trae, you play Yang as one of your values, then you could get, so you don't play Curry, so you play Giannis. right? And that makes sense. So you get one stud and another stud with correlation, and you have a value without, you know what I mean, without playing like the Utah guys, which you play with Curry. Makes sense. And then you have to find the right value guys to get in. We identified some of them. What else with respect to DraftKings for now? That's the way I build. I mean, we're literally just like that. Now I'll use Saber Sim to probably, you know, get some kind of like lottery ticket type builds, which I never would have thought of. Get a quick look at the plays, right? And if you want, I already mentioned most of them. Draymond, you could play him. Likewise, I think Draymond's probably a decent kind of like mid-range one-off to play if you're not playing Curry. I think that makes a little bit of sense. And the rest kind of stands on its own. All right, so next thing I want to do is I want to do a little bit of a FanDuel preview. What you could do, you could pause this right now if you don't want to look at FanDuel, and then I will come back in 2 seconds. Or you could stop if you don't want to look at FanDuel. I'm going to pause and be back in just a second. Okay, with respect to, I got to fix one thing, but with respect to FanDuel, it's the same type of process. But hold on, I just got to fix my, just want to fix my Portland projections real quick. Fix my, there's one other team I had to fix, Houston, right? One second. Yeah, I have to fix my Houston's. And again, we don't even know who's playing for Houston yet, so just be careful with that. So it's the same type of thing. First thing I'll do is I'll look at it from a pure value perspective, and I'll see that there's nobody you really need to play over here because they did a good job of pricing Westbrook up to 12-4, right? So while Westbrook does rate to be the quote-unquote best play, I mean, you don't need to play him. I mean, you could play Curry, you could play Giannis, you know, Lillard, Trey. I mean, all these guys are pretty good. So it does make things a little bit, you know, a little less clear with respect to who the top spend is. So I would say Curry and Giannis would be very similar. I see Giannis is getting a little less ownership, but again, that's now. You got to see how it looks later. But, you know, even Lillard's a little cheap, but he has got blowout risk. So that's the way I look at the overall slate. Let me look again with respect to pure value. Again, not a lot. Bertans-ish, James Johnson. Those are kind of like the main values over there. But again, what I want to do now is do position by position over at FanDuel. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to re-rank these by value, put in positions, and we're going to do it by the way I look at it, which is alphabetically here. So at center, it looks as though is a battle between three guys, the top play, and that would be Gobert, Capella, and Olynyk. And so that's what I would do. I mean, I would say, okay, there's these three. They're all very similar in price. Keep an eye on the ownership. They all look pretty reasonable, but you know, I'd probably end up playing three builds with all three with one of each. That's probably the way I would start my builds, actually. Seeing this is where the toughest decision to make would be. So I'd probably commit to making three different builds, one with Olynyk, one with Capella, and one with Gobert. With respect to power forward, it looks like, again, it's Giannis and Christian Wood are the two top plays. Christian Wood, I definitely would correlate, as I mentioned, with the Portland guys. You know, I find it difficult for, you know, for Lillard to have to play 4 quarters unless somebody from Houston was doing well. So I like Christian Wood here. And Giannis. And then, as I mentioned before, James Johnson, if you wanted to pay down and play good value. And also Bertans. So it depends on the rest of your build, right? So these would be my key guys I'd keep an eye on: James Johnson and Bertans, and then at the top would be Wood and Giannis. Point guard, I mentioned Westbrook's the best, but you don't have to play him. Then you're at Trey, Lillard, Curry. And once again, same comments as before. If you're going to play Curry, it's probably a good idea to play Utah guys, which we're going to get to in a minute. Like I mentioned, Gobert is one of my centers. Okay, I think that it's not the worst idea in the world to play Curry in lineups with Gobert. So in your three lineups, that your three builds, if you get the third of them that you're playing with Gobert, make those with Curry. I think that makes perfect sense. And likewise, if you're going to play Christian Wood, you know, I think you have more of a license to play Lillard in those lineups. Trae Young with Bertans, or Trae Young even with Westbrook. I certainly think that makes a lot of sense. Small forward, I mentioned. So you have two Utah guys. So this makes sense to play these guys alongside of Curry. You know, small forward's kind of a dumpster fire like it usually is. So if you're going to play guys that aren't going to look that great, you may as well get some correlation out of it. Kelden Johnson looks like a good one-off value play over here. Certainly going to use him. So again, like even though the Sheets value metric isn't big, he is one of the best point per dollar plays. So I'm certainly going to consider that. And then with respect to shooting guard, there's C.J. McCollum. Same comments with Lillard. I would really only play him alongside of a Wood or something like that, or a Olynyk. And DeRozan, you could play alongside of Giannis, right? That makes sense. Colin Sexton doesn't really correlate with anybody, so I probably wouldn't play him. It would probably be these two. And then if you wanted to pay down, not much. So for me, it'd be McCollum, DeRozan. I guess Sexton would be my next play, you know, if I didn't want to just lock in those first two. I guess that makes sense. So I think overall, I think it's a very, very, very good slate. I do. Again, it's all going to fall apart a little bit later, but for now, I would play this slate today. I would. I think there are good, very natural correlations that you can make here on this slate and make your lineups work. I guess that's it. Good luck. I'll see you guys live at 6:30. We're going to do baseball at 6, then go right into basketball at 6:30.